Good morning and happy Tuesday morning. Welcome in to Morning Jox. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you for the next hour as we recap everything you missed from last night and get you excited for another exciting day around the sports world. And there certainly was a lot going on yesterday, but I'm very excited for today's show because I was thinking through some things last night. And I was like, man, what would be something that would be fun to kind of have a debate about on the show today? And I decided I'm going to throw it out there here early so y'all can go ahead and maybe get the gears turning a little bit and start thinking about this as well. But I will provide some examples coming up a little bit later in the show. But I was thinking, what are the make or break games for specifically Alabama and Auburn, but then even some other programs in the SEC where not saying it's the game that maybe you're the most excited for the upcoming season or, the game that you think maybe would have the most viewers necessarily, but what based on where it is in the schedule, who the opponent is, what are the implications of a win or a loss in that game, and what are maybe the games that could ultimately decide the fate of Alabama and Auburn, whether that's trying to make a college football playoff spot or you're just trying to show that improvement to keep your job if you're Hugh Freeze. What are the make or break games for Alabama and Auburn football this year? You can go ahead and start thinking about that. And I'll give you my picks later on in the show, and then we'll hear from you at 205-834-9450 there on the courtesy GMC text line. So, yeah, that's going to be our fun conversation today here on Morning Jox, make or break games for both Alabama and Auburn football. But speaking of make or break games, Damian, that's exactly what you had yesterday afternoon for the Omahogs, as we're calling them now. Arkansas, they were facing elimination yesterday. And, the thing that I hate the most about this game, Damian, is that it was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I know there's a lot of people that maybe you're able to go back and watch the highlights, or maybe you had it recorded for when you got home. But there's a lot of people that probably missed this one yesterday. And this was just an absolutely masterful performance on the biggest stage by Gage Wood and the Arkansas Razorbacks. So Arkansas, they stave off elimination. They knock off Murray State 3-0. So Murray State, their Cinderella run, their season comes to a close. But it certainly had a lot to do with Mr. Gage Wood. So yesterday, he throws a complete game no-hitter for Arkansas. He strikes out 19 batters, no walks. The only blemish on his day, he did hit a guy in, the 7th or 8th inning, and that was what kept him from a perfect game, unfortunately. And if you heard him after the game, his first comment after the game was, "I shouldn't have hit that guy." So that just kind of tells you how locked in he was. But looking at him out on the field, there's sometimes you just look out there and you're like, I see a madman out there, and you're like, I don't want to mess with that. You had a situation late in the game where the Murray State guy was trying to call timeout, and you could tell that was just like fuel to the fire for Gage Wood on the mound. Because, he was talking about emptying the tank. He put out 119 pitches to get the job done for Arkansas yesterday in an absolute must-win situation. So, yeah, what an absolutely masterful performance. It's the first no-hitter in Omaha since 1960. So the first time in 65 years that's happened. It's just the third ever in the history of the Men's College World Series. He also set the record for most strikeouts in a game in Omaha with 19 yesterday. So absolutely incredible. I thought it was hilarious that if you were watching immediately after the game ended, they went to SportsCenter and have Jed Passan on to talk about his draft stock. Immediately, not even 5 minutes after the game.
Right.
It was like, all right, Jeff, tell us. So where are we going to see Gage Wood go in the next draft? It was just like, man, you are talk about capitalizing on the moment. But yeah, so Arkansas, incredible game yesterday, Damian. I truly am sorry for anybody that missed it because they were at work, because this was an incredible performance.
Yeah, we talk about people being in the zone. Look no further than Gage Wood. He probably could have thrown another 119 pitches as soon as the game ended. He was absolutely dialed in. And even late in that ball game, he's still throwing 97, 98 with his fastball.
Yep.
He was a man on a mission. And for Arkansas, this is what you wanted to see. I think that, it was an elimination game. It's essentially it's win or go home. There's no in between. And you saw the desperation and you felt the energy from Gage Wood and what he was able to do. Murray State, the batters just had they couldn't find a read on the ball. Like they could not. They could barely making contact and striking out 19. That kind of shows you that he was on a different level. And I think for Arkansas, I mean, you got to ride this momentum as much as you can. You probably asking him like, "Hey man, how quickly can you flip it around?" And we can have that same performance from you in the next time that we play. But I think that for Arkansas and Gage Wood, Dave Van Horn, I mean, yeah, you lost to LSU to start things off, but if that team that stepped on the field yesterday continues to play the rest of the way, it's going to be hard to stop them from not winning a national championship.
Yeah, no, that you see why now going into the Super Regionals, and I think even going to Omaha before the first games were played, Arkansas was the betting favorite to win the College World Series because they're a super talented team. But unfortunately, LSU kind of has their number, as you saw in the first game. But yeah, yesterday taking out Murray State to advance. Now later on today, they will have to play again. This game is scheduled for 6 o'clock, and they will face either LSU or UCLA. And the reason that we don't know is because there was a nice little rain delay last night. So if you missed the game last night, they were able to get through a few innings, 3.5 innings to be exact there between UCLA and LSU. But it was shaping up to be an incredibly entertaining baseball game. So you had UCLA. So in the top of the first inning, they went out and added 3 runs. Had a ton of guys get on base and just kind of, brought the carousel around the bases there a couple of times for UCLA. So they go up 3-0. Then LSU, they come to the plate in the bottom of the first. They added 1 run on an RBI single, and then Jared Jones gets up, hits a 3-run bomb. So LSU walked out of that first inning with a 4-3 lead, and you're like, all right, here come the fireworks. LSU would add a 5th run in the bottom of the third. So they currently lead 5-3 as play has been suspended officially in the bottom of the 4th inning. So that game is going to resume at 10 a.m. So very, very early, about 4 hours from now, that game's going to resume. The winner of that game will advance. The loser of that game will face Arkansas tonight at 6 o'clock. So talk about a quick turnaround.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's going to feel like you played 3 baseball games in 24 hours, and well, you kind of did in a way. So that's how that's going to go for UCLA and LSU. I think if you're Arkansas, you're probably hoping you face UCLA right now, and you don't want to have to deal with LSU again. But certainly that'll be an elimination game tonight. So whoever loses this morning, they will be on the brink of elimination. And then you're also going to have Oregon State and Louisville. That game will get underway at 1 p.m. today. That'll be your midday game there, and that is also going to be an elimination game. And as it stands right now, Coastal Carolina 1 win away from the College World Series. The same will be said for either UCLA or LSU after that game wraps up later this morning. So that's what's going on out there at Omaha. Quickly, let me see if I can find you the update real quick. I know that everyone really only cares about the Jello shot challenge that's going on that Paul Skeens and Livy Dunn seem to be enjoying yesterday.
Yeah, I noticed that.
If you saw that.
I saw they were up there supporting their alma mater.
Yep, they certainly were. And unsurprisingly, LSU still in the lead with 17,746.
Okay.
Jello shots. Murray State still in second, though. So unfortunately, don't think that's going to stay put for today since they've been eliminated. But they were in second at last check with 7,200. Let's see, you had Arkansas in third with 6,600. So, okay. UCLA still in last.
Right, and I think after last night, Arkansas might need to throw some a little bit more to Gage Wood and say, hey, can you help us out with this?
I was about to say
challenge?
The last update was like 8 hours ago. Something tells me the Arkansas fans are probably still awake.
I believe so.
Celebrating the game from last night, but I could be wrong.
Do you think this Arkansas momentum carries into football season?
Don't think they're related whatsoever, but I like where your head's at.
So you don't think great things are on the horizon for Sam Pittman and old Bobby P, Taylor Green, those boys?
No.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that it's going to be good enough to save someone's job. But a great season, no.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was any correlation.
Mm-hmm. No, I do not. Do not think that there is. So that's everything going on in Omaha there with the College World Series. But we did have some changes around here as well. So Alabama, they get a new president named yesterday to replace Dr. Stuart Bell, who had been at the head of the university for the last decade. You have Peter Moeller, and he comes over, and this was I'm not gonna lie, I struggled with this a little bit yesterday. So he has been named the new president of the University of Alabama, and he comes over as the vice president of research from Ohio State.
Wow, the Ohio State. That's
Yeah.
good.
So we had to bend the knee to the Buckeyes. And I'm just really excited for Mr. Moeller because he is going to get to work at a school that wins a national championship in football 2 years in a row.
There we go. Like
So
we had there.
that's exciting for him. Well, I'm just excited for him. I'm not thinking about me or anybody else. I'm just excited for the new president there. So President Moeller, he will replace Dr. Stuart Bell. He will begin his term on July the 21st. So a little bit of news there out of the capstone yesterday, and he kind of capped off his, I guess, introduction yesterday with a nice Roll Tide and a countdown to football season. So seems like he knows what some of the priorities kind of are down there.
He's familiar with the
in Tuscaloosa.
He's familiar with the standard. He's
Yes.
familiar with the area.
Yes, he certainly should be coming over from Ohio State. So that's some news going on there down in the capstone last night. So quickly, if you're just now joining us, coming up in a little bit, want to get to the make or break games for Alabama and Auburn football this upcoming season. So if you want to go ahead, you can start sending those in. If you have your own picks, or you can just chime in with your reaction to some of our thoughts coming up a little bit later in the show. But we did have a big moment last night. One of the biggest stars in the world finally returned to something very near and dear to his heart. We'll tell you how he fared next on Morning Jox. 6:15. Welcome back in. Morning Jocks here. Conrad and Damien with you until 7 o'clock when we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning. So last night, a very anticipated night around the world of Major League Baseball, and that is because you had the San Diego Padres taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. And if you were unaware, the reason that this game got a little more attention than just any other regular season game is you had Shohei Ohtani returning to the pitcher's mound for the first time since August of 2023. So he was very limited, and they had kind of said that set expectations going into the game. But we knew he was probably only go one inning, and that's exactly what he did. So he makes it one inning on the mound in his return, gives up a couple of hits and one earned run on a sac fly to Manny Machado there. So that was all for him through 28 pitches. And, again, just kind of let him go through his routine, let him get out there, kind of feel it out again as they work him back into the pitching rotation, which they certainly need him in LA because they've had a ton of injuries there in their rotation this year. But of course, going along with that, you just look up and you're like, oh, so I'm sure he had a nice day at the plate as well. And he did. He went 2 for 4 with an RBI double, an RBI single, and a walk. So helped himself out as well as kind of leading things off there from the pitcher's mound. So good to see Shohei Ohtani back, getting closer to 100%. And I think, regardless of if you're, his biggest fan in the world or not, I think we can all agree that baseball is certainly better when he is healthy. And a little bit of irony to go with it when apparently Ippei Mizuhara, who was his the interpreter, I saw a story that he reported to prison yesterday. So kind of maybe a full circle moment for Mr. Ohtani. With a new chapter of his life and getting rid of an old chapter that I think he certainly would rather forget.
It was almost like a Cheers moment. Here's to new beginnings.
Yes.
And, shout out to Shohei, too, for somebody, like you said during the break, like he's had 2 Tommy John surgeries, and yet he's still throwing damn near 100 miles an hour as a pitcher. And he hadn't pitched in pretty much 2 years.
Yeah, he's a freak.
He built different.
Yeah, not going to see many others like him, I don't think, in our lifetime. So certainly good to have him back there for the Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm sure Greg's very happy about that. And you do, a reminder also around Major League Baseball, you do have the Braves. They're going to be back in action tonight at home. They're going to host the New York Mets for a 3-game set. So that's going to be first pitch at 6:15. So you can hear that on Jox after Paul Feinbaum later this afternoon. So hopefully the Braves can pick up a series against the Mets and start, again, slowly chipping away, trying to get closer and closer to 500 as you approach the All-Star break. So we'll see if the Braves are going to be up to the task there. You also had last night, and I know, again, we try not to spend too much time on this stuff, but the NBA Finals. And again, these NBA Finals, I know from a viewership standpoint, we knew it was going to be a dud with Indiana and Oklahoma City, right? You don't have any major markets outside of Shea. You don't really have any big-name players, and I think a lot of people out there probably aren't even super familiar with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, even though he just won MVP. But it's been a fantastic series going back and forth, and especially for Indiana. They've been so impressive really this entire postseason run, but especially here in the finals because OKC, they've been the best team all throughout the season. But last night, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they took Game 5 of the NBA Finals, a pivotal game, as they now have a 3-2 lead in the series as they knocked off Indiana 120-109. The Pacers trailed by, this is kind of their special, man. This is what they do every game. They trailed by 18 at one point in the first half, and it was a 1-point game with, 8.5 minutes to go, something like that. And then OKC just kind of took over from that point on and sealed the deal. But Jalen Williams had 40 points last night. Shea had 31, so you get 70-plus from your 2 stars there in Oklahoma City. Tyrese Halliburton, he did have a calf injury, had to leave the game for a little bit and then came back. But he went 0 for last night. He had 4 points off of free throws, but 0 for 6 shooting from the floor. And these are the first time that the Pacers have lost back-to-back games in over 3 months.
And see, these are the reservations I have about Tyrese Halliburton.
Absolutely.
And it's, again, I know he's talented. I really do. But it's games like this where it's, man, if you are going to reach the status that you potentially could be, You can't have duds like this. Yeah, you could say if you're hurt, understandable. But you're in the NBA finals, man. And your team is going off the energy that you have. Yeah, Pascal Siakam, yeah, he's an all-star. He's an NBA champion. But you're looked at as the franchise guy. You were traded in for essentially your rise has been in Indiana, and they've needed you. Now, he's had great moments, but it's the consistency part that just it gives me reservation of he's not there yet. And yeah, I mean, he got a gold medal with the U.S. Team USA. Wasn't like
Even
he was
he acknowledged that he didn't
doing,
even
ain't do
do
nothing.
anything. Yeah.
Right, he's on the team.
Yeah.
And now in Indiana, it's how much longer do we have to wait? Because to me, you cannot have games like this in order to be looked at as a true superstar in the league. Like, you have to show up when it matters most. Yes, you're banged up, you're injured, you're hurt, but man, if you're out there, you going 0 for 6 just tells me, one, that you let the hurt or the injury kind of take over. You're not being aggressive. And I understand his game isn't, the flashiest. He only averages about 18 points a game, but you have to put up the shots. Now, I understand Indiana's identity as a team. They play a little bit more team-oriented ball. Like, it doesn't really matter where the ball, as long as it's going through the hoop, it doesn't really matter. But you are the focal point of that team. Like, you are the focal point of that offense. It doesn't get going until you start getting going. So, to me, you have to continue being aggressive, even when you're banging through some bumps and bruises, because everybody's going through that.
Yeah, no, you're spot on with that. I mean, this was his 8th game this postseason, scoring less than 15 points. And so, yeah, I mean, like you were saying, Damien, that's why you see a lot of the reservations from people. And I think we all expect OKC. I mean, I expected them to win the series in 5 or 6 games, and they're going to have an opportunity to do it in 6 coming up in a couple of days. But yeah, I mean, this is, it's just he's a good player, but if he's your best player, can you win an NBA title? And I think, to be determined, but unless he steps it up big time in the last 2 games, don't think that's going to happen. And a big part of that too is OKC is 6-1 all time when they have a 3-2 series lead in the postseason. So certainly bodes well for them. But if you do remember the time that they lost, that was one of my favorite NBA postseasons of all time. That was 2016 when they had a 3-1 lead over the Warriors, who had broken the Bulls record for most wins. The Warriors then came back in that series, and then the NBA Finals is when LeBron and the Cavs came back on their miracle run and knocked off the Warriors for that championship there in Cleveland. So, and that also is when KD decided to go to Golden State. So last time this happened, pretty devastating, as well as completely altering the NBA. So hopefully they don't choke it away again and have, a bomb go off across the NBA. But that's what happened last night in the NBA postseason. But I posed a question here at the beginning of the show, so you've had some time to think about it. And if you're just now joining us, you can kind of get those gears turning a little bit. But I wanted to pose the make or break games for Alabama and Auburn this upcoming football season. I went through, looked at the schedules, really thought about it. I didn't just pick, this is going to be the biggest game or this one's going to be the game day game. It's with the implications of where the game falls in the schedule, what could have happened maybe before that point in the season, and what could happen with both a win and a loss in terms of the rest of their season and how that maybe projects them forward. All of that was put into consideration. So I have put mine together. I've made my selections. I will deliver them to you. Damien will give me his reaction, tell me if he agrees or if he thinks I'm the biggest idiot on the planet Earth. And then we will get your reaction as well on the courtesy GMC text line 205-834-9450. So make or break games, Alabama and Auburn football in 2025. That's next on Jox. 6:31. Welcome back in to Morning Jox here. Conrad and Damian with you as we are about to dive into the make or break games for both Alabama and Auburn football this upcoming season. And a number of you already sending in your thoughts at 205-834-9450. They are on the courtesy GMC text line. We thank all of you for chiming in, and you are all welcome to do so. And we will get to those here in just a little bit. So you want to start with Alabama or Auburn, Damian?
We can start with Bama. You're an alum.
So you're leaning more towards them than Auburn in the who you're going to root for?
That has nothing to do with it, Conrad.
I'm just trying to connect the dots.
I appreciate it, but no, there is no correlation.
Okay. Just making sure. All right, so we're going to start off with Alabama. And so, again, if you're just now joining us, these are, in my opinion, the make-or-break game for both Alabama and Auburn this upcoming season. This is not going to be maybe the biggest helmet game, the game where it's the highest-ranked teams, but the implications of this game, and I will explain my reasoning why, I think are make-or-break for both Alabama and Auburn. So I've broken it down for each of these teams. I'm giving you the best-case scenario with this game, well, that's not ideal case scenario, right? Maybe you can work through it, but it's not great. And then we're going to go worst case scenario.
Gotcha.
Okay, this is bad. All right, so for Alabama, I chose at South Carolina in week 9. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that would probably say maybe it's Tennessee for the revenge last year. Maybe some of you would even go Oklahoma. Georgia, of course, is going to have a big impact on the season. But I went for South Carolina. And this is why. Because of where it falls in the schedule for Alabama football. It is their 8th game of the season. At this point, you will have played Georgia. And let's just say that game is a loss. You're having to go to Athens. It's a night game. I know it's Georgia and Alabama has their number, but it's going to be difficult. So let's say that you've lost that game. Well, now that sets up the South Carolina game as very, very interesting, right? Because have you dropped a game before that as well? Did you lose to Vanderbilt again? Did you lose to Tennessee again? Are you going into this game undefeated or with one loss, or are we talking about a completely different situation here? And I think that's where a lot of the implications come in for me is just if the season goes the way some of you think it is and it's going to be a repeat of last year, I think this is about the time you're really going to start to feel that. On the other hand, if this does look like a team that maybe is going to make some noise in the playoff, I think this is where you start to really believe that probably. So my best case scenario, Alabama at South Carolina in week 9. You go on the road, business as usual. It's a good South Carolina team, but not a great one. They didn't take the jump like we all expected them to. And if you're Alabama, you're going to be sitting there at 8-0, maybe 7-1, and you're going to feel really good about the way your season's going. That's best case scenario.
I like the thought process, Conrad.
My not ideal case scenario for this game is you have already lost to Georgia, and you now come into this game and you lose this game. So you sit there at 6-2. And you're certainly still going to be in the mix for the playoffs at that point, but you're going to be 6-2. You're still going to have to take on Oklahoma, LSU, and Auburn. You're going to have to win out all of those games to feel good about having a shot at making the college football playoff. So you still are in charge of your own destiny, but you're on really, really thin ice on top of, I know it's South Carolina, so a lot of people are going to go back and say, oh, no, this is 2010 all over again. Which, a side note, I did go back and actually look at that last night. Greg actually had a really great game. That was one of his best games, I think, statistically.
Great.
Had over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns against South Carolina that year.
Yeah, they were down. They had to throw it.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Couldn't run the ball to save. Couldn't run the ball to save their life on that day. But Greg had a nice day. I was like, I kind of forgotten that.
Yeah.
Kind of overshadowed by the fact we lost the game, but that's the way that it goes. So that was my not ideal case. Now the worst case scenario for me is Alabama. You go on the road to South Carolina, you lose, and that is your 3rd loss of the season. So you now find yourself at 5-3. You've already lost to Georgia.
Georgia and who else?
Vanderbilt. This is worst case scenario, Damian. This is worst case scenario. So you've lost to Georgia and Vanderbilt, and now you lose to South Carolina. So you're 5-3. You're not making the playoffs at that point. And Kalen DeBoer is certainly going to be on the hot seat for 2026.
So you think Diego Pavia has a chance of lightning striking twice?
This is worst case scenarios.
I got you. I just didn't know where that second loss would have come from before they got into South Carolina.
Oh, I mean, it'd obviously be Vanderbilt.
That's the one.
Yeah.
No, but I do agree with you as well that South Carolina would be the biggest. It's almost like a fork in the road because to your point, by that time in the schedule, either South Carolina's going to be, either reeling, or they're going to find themselves as in desperation mode of we have to win these big games. And for Alabama too, to your point, if you're coming in there undefeated or with one loss, you can't afford to play. You don't want to find yourself in an LSU or Ole Miss situation last year where it's we can't afford to lose another one. We just can't afford it. Like, let's handle our business and just go out here and win these ball games. But I think South Carolina's, one, good enough to, one, make it ugly and also win the game, and they're at home. Because you think about that game last year, it was 11 o'clock. It just never felt like Alabama was getting into a good groove. Still found a way to win the ball game, but it was a little bit closer than expected. And all Shane Beamer really needs is a little bit of hope. That's all he really needs. And he can make, he can turn it into something special. But I do agree with you at that point in the schedule, with it being later in the season. And I think that would probably be the must. It's a fork in the road game of, all right, we know what this backstretch is going to look like with LSU, Oklahoma, Auburn. Well, you get you get LSU and Oklahoma at home, but Oklahoma beat you last year.
Yep.
So it's in a tricky spot because you can't afford at that point to lose another one moving forward.
Exactly. And that's, a big part of why that was the one that I went with. And I will say this, and I'm sure there's some people that are texting in right now with Tennessee as their pick. I'm not trying to jinx anything or whatever. I'm not trying to, speak poorly on anybody. I don't view Tennessee as big of a threat as South Carolina, and so that's why I picked South Carolina over Tennessee, because I understand Tennessee from the rivalry standpoint, but, I mean, I don't know what to make of them with Joey Aguilar right now, so that's why I went South Carolina. You seem very offended about that for somebody that's not a fan of that program.
Just following the thought process that, you don't see Tennessee as a threat, but you see Vanderbilt is. I just didn't know we've gotten to a point now.
No, that was just worst case scenario.
I got you.
They'd catch Alabama slipping again.
Interesting. But Tennessee can't.
No, not in Bryant-Denny.
I got you.
Not in Bryant-Denny. Now in that other place, yeah, sure. All right, so for Alabama, I chose Week 9 at South Carolina. That's my make-or-break game for Alabama and the upcoming college football season. Now, how about on the plains of Auburn? Now, this one was kind of tricky as well, and you have a group there kind of in the middle of the season, and I think any three of those games you could really make a strong argument for. Heck, you could probably make a strong argument, honestly, for the Arkansas game if you wanted to. But the game I chose for Auburn, their make-or-break game, in my opinion, for the upcoming season is at Texas A&M, and that's going to be in Week 5. So the reason that I chose that one is I think we expect, at worst, you would be 3-1 going into that game, but potentially 4-0. And if you beat Texas A&M in that game, you're going to be 5-0 heading into that game against Georgia in Jordan-Hare at night. We're going to have some interesting discussions if that's the situation. I think there's going to be a lot of people that at that point, and I'll put myself in this group, if we're talking about a 5-0 Auburn team coming out of College Station, like, yeah, I'm a believer in Auburn at that point. And so I think that's a big game for them. I know they won it last year, so it's not like a revenge thing or anything. But again, it's a very solid opponent on the road, and it's sandwiched in between Oklahoma and Georgia, which are two difficult games as well. So my not ideal case scenario for Auburn, so middle of the pack here, would be you come into the game at 3-1. You lost, I'm going to assume, to Oklahoma, but maybe you lost to Baylor in the season opener. But you're 3-1. You come into the game, and then at that point, you almost have to win this game if you want to keep your playoff hopes alive. Because at that point, you would be 3-2, and you would probably, just based on what your schedule gives you, have to beat both Alabama and Georgia. And even then, I mean, it would be tricky. If you won out and went 10-2, you'd be fine, obviously. But if you go 9-3 with wins over Alabama and Georgia, maybe that keeps you in the conversation. But, you don't want to be in Week 5 feeling like, man, we're 3-2. We're already out of things here in the playoff hunt. Granted, you'd still be in play for like an 8-4 kind of season, which would certainly be an improvement. But then the worst case scenario that I have for Auburn would obviously be you lose to Oklahoma the week before. That's on the road. Then you go to College Station, you lose there, and then the next week you have Georgia, and you lose there. And so maybe you started off 3-0, things are looking good, but now you find yourself at 3-3, and you're wondering, man, are we going to be able to find a way to get to 8 wins and potentially save Hugh Freeze's job or not? And you would kind of have, you'd pretty much have to beat Alabama at that point to have any sort of, marquee moment from the season. So I chose at Texas A&M week 5 for my make or break game for Auburn.
I don't think it's wrong. I actually, until you laid out the argument, I do. It does make sense. I would have leaned more Oklahoma.
Okay.
And it's mostly because we will know what these teams look like by they both would have been tested by the time they match up with each other, and it's the SEC opener for both.
Yeah.
I think for Oklahoma, it's all right. Can you stick it to Jackson Arnold of saying it was you?
Mm-hmm.
And can Jackson Arnold look at Oklahoma and say, no, it was you? And by that time, Oklahoma has played Michigan, and Auburn opens up with Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are they both coming in 3-1? Are they both coming in, a 2-1? Are they going to both be 3-0? Either way, it's the season. It's the SEC opener, and for Auburn, it's on the road again. And I think that I don't look at Texas A&M as there yet. Like, I still think Auburn, even though Auburn was a bad team last year, you beat them. I think that they are good enough right now. If we put paper on paper, just resume on resume,
Mm-hmm.
schedule on schedule, roster on roster, I think Auburn's a better team than Texas A&M right now. But I don't have that same thought process with Oklahoma, where I look at Oklahoma as how much fire do they have inside of them right now? Because Brent Venables knows you got to get it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the same way for Hugh Freeze. I think they're very similar, and that's kind of that make or break for both of them. I think that for Auburn, to your point, you fall to Oklahoma week 3, week 4, and then you got Texas A&M on the road. How is it a hangover effect after that? You get a bye week, but then you got to go. Then you have Georgia, but you get them at home,
Mm-hmm.
and it could get funky in Jordan-Hare. Who knows? But then you have Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, so you can get back in good footing. But then you finish up with Alabama. So I think that for Auburn, if you win the game, it's almost kind of – Greg has brought up a great point about Auburn is these are the games that you just leave all doubt. Like, don't make us still have question marks after the Oklahoma game of, yeah, they kind of skated by, but are they good? Can we feel confident that they go the rest of the way? But if you go out and you handle your business with Oklahoma, then it's, all right, yeah, now this team is a force to be reckoned with. So I would just move it a week up just because it's the SEC opener,
Mm-hmm.
and both teams are kind of in that same boat of we need this one.
No, I'd like that. I think that's very similar reasoning to mine. But again, I don't think you can go wrong. Oklahoma, Texas A&M, or Georgia, because those are all back to back, kind of in the middle of the season. I think you could make a strong argument for all of those games there for Auburn. But yeah, if you get past that, what would be Georgia in week 6, if you get out of that game and you're 4-2. I think you have to feel pretty good as an Auburn fan because then okay, yes, we're going to have to face Alabama, but like you said, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer. I think you feel good you can rip off 5 in a row there. And then, obviously, that would set up a situation where you could play Alabama with a chance to get a playoff spot if you beat them. So I think that's where you'd want to be if you're an Auburn fan. You certainly wouldn't mind 5-1 or 6-0, but I think 4-2 is maybe a little more realistic there. So those are the make and break games. Alabama, I have at South Carolina week 9, Auburn at Texas A&M in week 5. Those are my thoughts. You got some of Damien's as well. So now we hear from you, a lot of you chiming in at 205-834-9450 there on the courtesy GMC text line. Also 1-800-239-9569 there on the phone lines. And that's where we'll go next here on Morning Jox. Welcome back into Morning Jocks. Conrad and Damien here with you, getting your reaction to the make or break games for Alabama and Auburn football this upcoming season. If you're just now joining us, we put out there Alabama at South Carolina in Week 9 and Auburn at Texas A&M in Week 5 as potentially the make or break games for the entire season for both of them. Damien, he went Oklahoma for Auburn, which is Week 4, the week before Texas A&M. He kind of leaned more towards that one than Texas A&M, but excited to get y'all's reaction on the courtesy GMC text line, and that is where we will go right now. So Tim from Coleman, he chimes in. He says, I think for Alabama, it's got to be Tennessee, whether they beat Georgia earlier in the season or not. If you lose to Tennessee, it's going to really feel like a rinse and repeat of last year. And I certainly think that's fair. And definitely, again, I mean, with Tennessee and a lot of the question marks with them, I think that would, sting for some people to lose to that team again in Bryant-Denny, because that's kind of the one thing you have, right, is you haven't lost to them in Bryant-Denny in a very, very long time. But yeah, you definitely need to win the Tennessee game. No doubt about that one, Tim. Ballhead from Tuscaloosa, he says, Alabama must win games this year. How about all of them? Well,
makes sense.
That's typically the goal. Let's see. Don says, South Carolina on the road for Alabama is my pick, and then Oklahoma would be his pick for Auburn. So great minds think alike, right, Damien?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Bobby chimes in. He says, I know y'all are focusing on Alabama and Auburn with this question, but a make or break that could determine how the SEC picture plays out. Give me LSU versus Clemson. If LSU can win that and go into conference play undefeated for the first time in 5 years, then watch out. So obviously that's a big game. I do disagree with you a little bit, Bobby. I don't think that game really, it matters, but it doesn't have any impact on the SEC standings. And I fully expect Clemson to be the ACC champion and in the playoffs. So if you're LSU and you have a loss to them early in the season, it's not ideal. You want to win that game, but I don't think it really messes you up that much. And as far as, how the SEC plays out, it doesn't have any impact on that. It's still going to be a big game and a big opportunity for LSU. It just doesn't have the long-lasting implications that some of these other games have, in my opinion. Let's see, someone chiming in from Gadsden. For Alabama, they say Alabama has to beat Florida State by 21, and then you have to beat Oklahoma, LSU, Auburn, and Georgia. Well, yeah, those would
beat them by 21.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but yeah, have to beat them by 21.
God almighty.
So if you beat them by 18, he's going to be pissed.
But they still covered the spread.
Not going to be
at least
happy.
early on.
Let's see. Bama Hater says Alabama's make or break games would be all of them, but I would have to say Oklahoma, Vandy, and Tennessee since they're all revenge games from last season. Okay.
Fair, I guess.
Fair enough. Brandon chimes in for Auburn. He says they must win all of their non-conference games and beat all of the weaker teams in the SEC. The make or break stretch is weeks 1 and then 4, 5, and 6 with Baylor, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Georgia.
Yeah. I kind of debated about Baylor too, because if
Sawyer Robinson's good, man.
Yeah,
you gotta
get that one.
Yeah, Baylor's certainly a good team, and the saving grace for Auburn is just obviously you have Alabama at the end, but outside of Alabama, the second half of their schedule, it's not very difficult.
Right
now, can you go to Arkansas on the road and lose? Sure. Can you lose to Missouri? Sure, but
you shouldn't.
You should correct. You should not. Let's see. Joseph, he chimes in. He says, for Alabama, the most critical game is the Tennessee game. They can't lose that one at home with their next 4 SEC games being South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, and Auburn, and you already might have a loss to Georgia. Okay, yeah, that's another good argument for Tennessee there. He also says for Auburn, I think the make or break game is the season opener against Baylor. If they lose that game, it's going to be a long season for the Tigers. Then you play Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Georgia. You could be 2-3 going into Georgia if you lose to Baylor. That's certainly on the table.
It is.
If that happens,
we're going to be having some real tough conversations.
I think we're talking about somebody else. And then Eric in Adamsville, I say the first game of the season for Alabama, have to play our extension, the University of Alabama in Tallahassee, and look out for Gus. Yeah, it's possible. All right, Deacon, real quick. Sorry we left you hanging. 30 seconds, Deacon. What you got for us this morning?
That's all right, brother. I was just going to say if Auburn loses to Baylor, Baylor's the one for me, and Tennessee's the one for Alabama because if Damian picks Auburn, I can just see him on the cow-pulled Auburn bandwagon from Lee County wearing his Tennessee onesie with his white knuckle grip on his Josh Heupel bobblehead, just crying in his Fruit Loops. And you, Conrad, you actually said Alabama might lose to Vanderbilt. I'm going to visit my Vanderbilt dugout today just to make sure it's clean for next year in case your prophecy comes.
Thank you, Deacon. Sorry we had to cut you off there. McElroy and Kubik in the morning. They're